Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take, a whole stack of information and really boil it down to what matters. And today, we're diving into something pretty timely. Maui car rental prices. We're looking specifically at summer 2025, especially this period right around the July 4th holiday. And for this deep dive, we've pulled together some really unique sources. We've got detailed weekly price reports, lots of historical data, and even some interesting forecasts.
Yeah, and our goal here for you listening is basically to cut through all that noise. We want to pull out the most important bits, the real nuggets of knowledge, and give you a clear picture of what's actually happening with Maui car rentals right now. Hopefully you'll feel well-informed, maybe even have an aha moment or two.
Definitely. And I think there are some real surprises in here, particularly about, well, what didn't quite happen with that big July 4th price peak everyone expected. So let's kick things off with the latest news. This is as of June 29th, 2025. That anticipated spike in Maui car rental prices for the 4th of July, it appears to have mostly, fizzled out. For most types of cars, prices stayed at pretty reasonable levels, surprisingly.
That's exactly right. If you look at the current lowest prices, say for a one-week rental starting June 30th, right out of Maui's Kahului Airport, OGG, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So the cheapest economy car is about $270 a week from Payless. That's up maybe 8% from last week. Midsize, though, that's jumped a bit more, about $340 a week from Thrifty, up 15%. But then, interestingly, Jeeps are actually down slightly, about 3%, $636 a week from Payless. And SUVs, they've seen a pretty big drop, actually, down 24% to $457 a week from Thrifty.
But, the thing that really jumps out, I think, are the deals, like convertibles. They're holding steady at just $395 a week from Payless. No change from last week. That seems low.
Yeah, it's exceptionally good. And it's fascinating because convertibles seem to be an exception to the usual seasonal price swings right now. Our thinking is, well, maybe Payless got a new shipment and they're trying to work off some excess inventory. That could be holding the price down. I mean, $395 a week?
Yeah.
That's way below the 52-week median price, which is $631.
Wow.
So yeah, it feels more like low-season pricing for convertibles. It's actually a great time to rent one if that's what you're after.
Right. But then on the flip side, the bigger vehicles are still commanding, well, astronomical levels, really. Seven-seat SUVs, you're looking at $1,140 a week from budget. That's up 13%. And minivans.
Yeah.
Still the most expensive, $1,257 a week from Avis. That's down 6%, but still pretty steep.
Yeah, so it's definitely a mixed picture. But if you put it all together, it suggests we're at or very near that seasonal summer price peak, the one that pretty much happens every year right around the Independence Day holiday.
Okay, so that's the snapshot right now. But, the big question for anyone planning is, what's next? Here's where it gets really interesting, right? What are the forecasts telling us for the next few weeks?
Well, based on our projections, it looks like prices are peaking pretty much right now. We expect them to kind of ease off into a post-holiday dip, which is pretty standard. And after that dip, they should sort of level off the rest of the summer high season, so through July and into early August. And this lines up really well with historical trends. We saw this in our big 5-year price tracking study, the one from 2013 to 2018. Prices peaked around July 4th, then stayed at those summer levels. And actually, this exact same pattern happened just last year, summer of 2024.
Okay, so history seems to be repeating itself there. But this brings up a crucial question for booking. I know a lot of listeners are probably thinking, okay, July 4th, peak season, surely booking last minute is going to be way more expensive. But your data tells a different story, right? Is it actually cheaper to book last minute for this specific holiday?
It's a great question, and yeah, the data is pretty surprising. We've been tracking these advanced booking prices since way back in mid-December 2024. And what we saw consistently is that if you looked, say, 5 weeks ahead, the prices showed these peaks lining up with busy times like Memorial Day and Independence Day. But then take Memorial Day, for example. Those high advanced prices, they really just fizzled down. They got much lower for the last-minute bookings.
Right. And we saw the same thing for the July 4th week this year. Let's look at the week starting July 7th. About 5 weeks before that date, the price was, $451 a week from the airport?
Yep.
And $316 a week if you rent it off airport.
Exactly. And now, here's the really dramatic part. That airport price, the $451, it's fallen by $200.
Wow.
Down to just $251 a week. And the off-airport price, the $316, that's down $90s to $226 a week. And with just a week to go until July 7th, prices probably won't shift much more. Our tracking even suggests they might edge a little lower still.
So that's the real aha moment here, isn't it? Those expected high prices for Independence Day week, they're just fizzling out again for people booking closer to the date. It really goes against what you'd expect for such a peak travel time. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Another really surprising trend you've uncovered is about renting off airport versus right at Kahului Airport, OGG. I mean, historically, everyone knew off airport was the cheaper way to go, right? To save some money.
Absolutely. That was the standard expectation for years. Off-airport rentals in Maui, they were almost always cheaper, partly because you avoided some of the higher mandatory taxes and fees they tack on at the airport, and partly because there was this sort of discretionary convenience premium you paid for grabbing the car right there at OGG.
Right.
But, well, in the last few months, that historical pattern has been completely disrupted.
Yeah.
We're now seeing off-airport prices frequently being higher than airport prices.
Really? Higher?
Yeah. If you look at the data right now, for the week of June 30th, off-airport prices are higher than airport prices in every single vehicle category that's available off-airport. So economy, compact, midsize, Jeep, SUV, minivan, all more expensive off-airport. And for some popular ones like convertibles and those big 7-seat SUVs, there's just no off-airport availability showing up at all right now.
That is a complete reversal. What do you think is going on there? Could it be connected to, well, the aftermath of the Lahaina wildfires back in August 2023? Maybe those off-airport places had to cut back inventory, scale down operations?
That's certainly a plausible theory. You know, the business environment got really tough after the fires. And whatever the reason, it definitely seems like that traditional model is completely turned on its head right now. And honestly, it's unknown when or even if we'll see things go back to the way they were.
Okay, so zooming out a bit, how does Maui actually stack up against the other Hawaiian islands for car rentals? Is it like the most expensive place, which I think a lot of people might assume?
Yeah, that's a common assumption, but it turns out, no, not really. We did a quick check looking at the cheapest one-week rental starting back on June 16th across 5 major Hawaii airports. And Hilo Airport, ITO, on the Big Island, was actually the cheapest.
Okay.
Kauai's Lihue Airport, LIH, was very close behind, just a few dollars more. Then came Maui's Kahului, OGG.
So middle of the pack.
Exactly, right in the middle. Then Honolulu, H&L, was a bit more expensive than Maui, and Kona, KOA, also on the Big Island, was the most expensive of the 5 we checked.
Interesting.
So yeah, Maui is solidly in the middle there. More than Lihue or Hilo, definitely, but less than Honolulu or Kona. It really sort of debunks that myth that Maui is automatically the priciest island for renting a car.
This is all fascinating stuff, and it feels really solid because of the data behind it. Can you just briefly touch on the methodology? How do we know all this?
Sure. So the core of this is really consistent tracking. We've been monitoring prices for 7 different vehicle categories, and we checked 10 different rental companies operating out of Maui's Kahului Airport, OGG. And we do this every single week. We started this detailed tracking back in July 2024 for the cheapest economy car categories specifically. Our weekly tracking goes back even further over a year now to July 2023.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a lot of continuous data. And then for the bigger picture historical context, we also draw on that comprehensive 5-year study we did. That tracked prices week by week from 2013 all the way to 2018.
Yeah.
So having that depth, both recent and historical, lets us spot these kinds of trends and, hopefully give you really reliable insight.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. To recap the key takeaways from this deep dive. First, that big July 4th price peak for Maui car rentals, it kind of fizzled for most cars, leading to some surprisingly good deals, especially, it seems, on convertibles. Second, this ties into the unexpected finding that booking last minute, at least for this specific holiday period, often turned out cheaper than booking way in advance. Counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Third, we uncovered this really significant flip where off-airport rentals are now often more expensive than renting right at the airport, which completely reverses the historical pattern. And finally, looking wider, Maui isn't actually the most expensive Hawaiian island for car rentals. It sits comfortably in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, exactly. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
understanding these kinds of specific, nuanced market shifts, it's not just useful if you're planning a Maui trip, obviously. It helps all of us, I think, develop a more critical eye for information, for trends, for how things really work versus how we assume they work. Which leads to maybe a final thought for you to mull over. Consider how something very localized, a specific event like the devastating Lahaina wildfires in Maui, how those local events can send ripples out. Ripples that can completely upend long-standing economic patterns, creating these really counterintuitive situations, these odd opportunities and challenges in markets that seem On the surface, maybe unrelated, like car rentals. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other hidden impacts might past events be having right now on market dynamics that you just take for granted?